This is Project Independence in You. My co-host today is Otto, which everybody knows. And we just had a wonderful conversation with Marcus O'Toole, who's an elder law attorney. And at the end of the day, you know, I like Marcus personally, and we've done stuff together, but it's just important for everybody. I know Otto is a man, and one of the reasons Otto, not one of the reasons, that's a terrible thing to say, but as the co-host, it's not one of the reasons he is the co-host because he's just a wonderful human being, but as a co-host, he does his homework for everything. As part of the Kristina Lou show, you know, you have two people like that, Kristina and Otto. It's just the perfect place. So
and you, John, don't forget.
You, John, right?
Okay, I was
John,
waiting.
you're the orchestra leader.
That's right. Don't forget it.
No, but it really is. The show is always tremendous, whether it's, you know, the first half of the show, which is information to our audiences, or the second half, which is also information, but from a whole different perspective. It's more personal sharing. It's more Kristina telling us about what's going on around the town, and there's always something new and exciting around the town. And as we've talked about many times, which I'm going to go into right now, this COVID is a nightmare. And I heard on the radio this morning that a vaccine is now possible for October, November of 2021. Now, you're making it all up. Somebody had an interview with Estra, and I can't remember the rest of the name, one of the drug companies. And they basically said, no matter who's saying what, it's not there. It's not going to be there for quite some time. And then producing millions and millions of the vaccine is another whole story. And yet we're watching numbers surge again. Thanksgiving's coming up, so we could actually talk about that. I think we did a little bit last week. Plans have to be so different every day. I mean, like, I think it was 120,000 cases the other day. You can't do this. My daughter went shopping the other day. She went to Costco first. She said it was horrendous, the lines, and left. Went to Trader Joe's. She said they're out in the street. So it's almost like people are getting ready again. Are we going to be bunkering down and therefore, you know, need to fill up with the toilet paper and the tissues and ketchup all over again?
You know, I've developed a kind of an overview thinking about this whole COVID thing, all right? And I broke it down into three categories. One, it has to be contained. Two, it has to be treated if you get it. And three, it has to be prevented. And we have to work on all three of those things at the same time. We can't think that preventing is going to take care of containing and treating, because it's
I know.
not.
I'm so with you, Otto.
No?
You know, you need absolutely.
Yeah. So first problem is containing, and we seem to get into a philosophical battle over your freedom rights about the containing. We got to contain it, or it's going to go crazy. And then we hopefully treat the people who do get it to cut the death rate down, but people are going to die. But the preventing, John, you just said something, 2021, toward the end of the year. You know, we're talking a year from now. You know, something's got to be done in between in these other areas, containing and treating. You know, it's big.
The world has totally changed. I mean, look what we're doing here. I mean, fortunately, Kristina and Dan organized the radio to commence, I think it was in March or April. I don't remember exactly when we came back on the air after a couple, we were only off for a couple of weeks, but it's via Zoom. There's a positive of it in that we have had speakers or guests that we wouldn't have had maybe normally because they're calling in from Washington or wherever they're calling in from. But it's also missing Kristina's parties that she always fed us and had cupcakes and everything else. I'm losing weight. I'm losing weight because of COVID. I'm not coming over to the station, you know, to get a cupcake once in a while. She had her cupcake last week for Halloween. We didn't get one. But even with that, I have to acknowledge that Kristina, when we did our anniversary show, made sure that she delivered treats to both Dan, not both Dan, however you say it, Dan, Otto, and myself, which was, you know, wonderful.
Hand delivered.
Yeah, hand delivered, which is Kristina.
Right, hand delivered.
And Dan has that, I don't even know what you call it, the alarm on his house. He knew somebody was burglarizing him.
That's right.
How are you, Kristina? We haven't chatted that much this week.
I'm good. good. Yes, it's been quite the week, obviously, but we are powering through. That's all we really can do. And I just want to quickly just touch upon our first guest. He was wonderful, and we can't stress enough the importance of preparing. So that is kind of our spiel on the show and how important it really is. And I think, as we're all talking about, being in this whole new world and coronavirus and all this, it makes people, I think, hopefully sparks in your brain really even more so the importance of planning and getting everything in order, because something like this can come out of nowhere and completely, rock the universe. So I think it's definitely an important thing. So you guys did a fabulous job on that interview.
Thank you. It was.
And next week we have on a really equally important subject, which is going to be about elder abuse awareness and prevention. We have someone coming on from Family and Children's Association and the Safe Center Long Island. Unfortunately, that's something that you've certainly heard increasing even more during this pandemic, with people being home and stressed, and, it just adds all these heavy issues, and sometimes things explode. So we're going to kind of touch upon that and things to do. And
They're coming on together or two
yeah,
half
they'll
hours?
be on together. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're going to be on together.
Two great organizations.
Absolutely, and they're doing a lot of work. They're doing a lot of webinars together. So we're just trying to get the word out there. And I think, it's really important. Like I said, on the show, we have a forum and a space to kind of talk about all different aspects of life, and things that are going on. And unfortunately, there's these trends, not that they're positive things, but that need to be addressed. And to know that there really are organizations and resources out there that can help in these times. So please tune in next weekend. It should be next week. It should be a really informative show. So that is very important. I also want to remind people, which is very exciting and fun news, we're trying to get creative over at Project Independence with different virtual programming. So there's going to be a Margaret, who is our Zumba extraordinaire instructor and fitness instructor. Everyone loves Margaret. She certainly brings the energy, I think everyone can say, but she is going to be doing a virtual live fitness class. Which is nice. We've been providing all these exercise programs that are usually pre-recorded, but this is going to be the first actually live one. So you could do that via Zoom. The registrations are pouring in for that. So I really recommend people call up to get involved with that, because it's going to be wonderful. So definitely check out Margaret. And she's going to be doing a fitness class. So like I said, you have to register for these classes. So you just call 311 or 869-6311 for that information. We also had, I know you guys were talking a little bit before about Thanksgiving and the holidays coming up, and kind of how things are going to be different based upon what people kind of are comfortable with, and the logistics of things. So yes.
What are you doing as far as Thanksgiving goes?
Well, I mean, we're kind of fortunate because our Thanksgivings have been it's just our household usually, because my parents are upstairs with my brother. So in most recent years, it's just been our kind of intimate family, because it just gets way too complicated and no one has enough space for everyone. So we usually did that. And then, we would visit, my, family the next day or so. So we'll probably still do that, because we've all just been outside constantly. I've been completely adapted to cold weather at this point. The amount of time that I spend outside. On Halloween, I powered through. We'd had that fire going, all day long. So that was our way of kind of coping with the cold weather and still being able to see people, even though we were a little cold. But we made it, that's what our priorities were.
John, what about you?
Totally undecided. I have 3 daughters. Everybody's in the neighborhood. My littlest daughter her husband came up with, why don't we all make a dish and go around in the morning and drop it off at the other's house, and then do a Zoom call sometime in the afternoon and have dinner, where everything would be from a different family. I thought it was a nice idea. Then my oldest daughter, that was my youngest daughter, my oldest daughter wants to do a COVID test for everybody on Wednesday, and then have it like Saturday or Sunday, because two of them are teachers, so they're going to be off on Thanksgiving. They're going to be off on Friday. So she said, Dad, we won't see anybody for a couple of days. Take a COVID test, and the middle one has a very large house, and she's like, we could even do bagels here. Go out in the backyard, which we've done before. We have gone to see the kids, and and she has a den that's just huge. And she said, and if we wind up inside, we would be 6 foot from each other having a bagel. And you're not going to have a Thanksgiving dinner, because my wife will not sit. And she's very concerned, more specifically for me, but she says, I'm not sitting at a table. And because two of them are teachers and go to school, my little guy, not my little guy, my biggest, who's 9, going to be 10 in January, he was exposed to COVID because his teacher had it. This is only last week. So they closed the classroom. He had to go home, etc. My smallest one, who is a year and 8 months, is in daycare. That teacher came down with it, so they closed that thing. And so I mean, there's two different families. Everybody's doing their best.
And that's what, and because what's very difficult about this time that we're in, it's this fear of planning, because like I said, because I was frankly, because we were actually trying to figure out what to do with Jay's family, because Jay's family is a lot larger. A lot of them work in medical settings. So Jay's just really not comfortable, with the situation. So we're trying to think of different ways to do stuff. But I said, it's like, you don't know. I mean, if these numbers are climbing, like what state we're going to be in, you know what I mean? By the time Thanksgiving rolls around. So it's like, you're in this weird limbo.
It's not going to be better. That's for sure. It's too short.
So you're in a weird thing, so you're scared to plan anything because you don't really know, what's going to happen, so we're kind of just always leaving things up to like, to be determined, after any time there's anything we're doing, it's like to be determined. This is not, set in stone. But I also, it's a little pricey.
The only issue I have with the tent, I have it now, I didn't have it before, is when you're going to put up a tent for Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, it's cold. So you're having the sides down. So it's no different than being in the
house.
No, but what I actually saw.
In the summertime, it was fine because the sides are up. And it's only there in case it rains.
No, but with the tent, actually, what they're doing, so not all walls are down. So you still have like the main, because he sent me like the picture of what it looked like, because that was what I was concerned about. It was like, there was essentially 2 of the sides had the walls down. And then the other one was, there was like airflow coming in from the other spaces still.
Okay.
Because I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, well, like, so you're going to be
but
sitting.
But then you need a heater.
Right. Like, yeah. So that was, that's the,
okay. So then.
And unfortunately, believe me, I've tried to research buying an outdoor heater because, but they are impossible to find, unfortunately, right now.
Oh, really? Yeah, it would make sense. I mean, those things, they weren't valuable, and now they're.
So we're just the old-fashioned. We're keeping it the old-fashioned way. Me and Jay, we have, we bought an incredible amount of firewood, and we just keep that fire going anytime we are outside with people. And it's nice, it creates a cozy atmosphere. So luckily, I have myself a Jay who can man a fire and keep that going.
Right.
Because if it was up to me, we'd really all have problems.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry, but unfortunately, I don't think there's any miracle in how we can do this. Like John, like you, I have 3 daughters, all very close.
Okay.
And 2 of them take turns every other year doing Thanksgiving with anywhere from 15 to 20 people. And my other daughter does Christmas Eve with a lot of people. This year, we're not doing it. We're going to go to one daughter's house. There'll be 4 of us, period.
Well, you mean like
one daughter,
right?
Yeah, just one daughter. Not all day affair.
Yeah.
Just, sort of sit far apart on the table. We know each other, but the other daughters are all going to be on their own. And it's sad. To me particularly, because I really like that stuff. And my other daughter, Christmas Eve, we're jumping the gun a little. She has like 35 people for the traditional Italian fish thing. And that's not going to happen either. She thought about a tent. We thought about doing COVID tests, like you said, John, the one relative of your son-in-law.
Right.
And that's not practical really either, because the rapid test is not everywhere, and the other test takes anywhere from 3 to 10 days. And, you know, we have people just like you. My daughter is a teacher, one of them in Hicksville. The others all work at places where they're exposed all the time. Um, so it's, you know, there's no miracle here, I don't think.
No,
No,
I
there
agree.
isn't, you know, that's, and it's, of course, it's difficult because, like you said, you know, the hardest part about these things are things that, you know, are, you know, your traditions and things you look forward to, you know, so of course it's, you know, it's heartbreaking, you know, and it's very difficult to not sit there and dwell on, you know, and think about those things. But you know what you're doing is nice, you know, and you got to look forward to, hopefully, you know, it's, the bottom line is you got to do things that keep everyone safe, you know, and unfortunately there is no magic cure, you know, thing for that. And like I said, everyone can come up with whatever they're comfortable with, and hopefully we have some warm weather on Thanksgiving, because that'll really just make it nice, you know. But I think a lot of people are going to do the virtual thing, because that's something we are frankly talking. So like I said, Jay's family is enormous, you know, and they all, you know, like I said, a lot of them work in medical settings, and they all have like a bazillion children. And it's just, you know, the number just grows like just crazy, you know, so it's just really, you know, something. So I was like, you know what, I was like, the virtual thing might have to be the way to go with them this year. You know, so it's definitely tough, you know, and it's because these are things people look forward to, and that's is heartbreaking. But I say, you know, like, you got to kind of figure out a
But the
way.
consequences, and
Right.
I've said this to people, so you want to be with your loved ones this year.
Yeah.
And God forbid you don't take all the proper precautions, and next year one of those people is no longer at the table.
Right.
It's not worth it. At the
No,
end of the
absolutely.
day, so, you know, and even if you had to plan, Kristina, your family, or Otto, your family, and just say you came down that morning, you were sick anyway. Nothing. This is 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And said, last Christmas I was sick. So we still had Christmas. I was up in bed.
Yeah.
And I came down maybe for about an hour of it.
Yeah.
And the kids were opening presents, and it was cute for a few minutes, them running around.
Yeah.
And I said, I couldn't stay, and I went upstairs. So they still had fun. So now it's just bigger, meaning more people are going to be excluded. But for safety, it's once in your lifetime. And, you know, between
No,
Otto,
you know, it's also, you don't.
you're a baby. So you have many, many more years, Kristina. You know, it's like, it is what it is.
No, and I think, you know, like you know, we always say on the show, it's, you know, you could still do something little, whether it's dropping food off, you know, at someone's house. You know, I think the whole premise is, you know, not everyone is going to be able to get together, but I also don't think you need to ignore anyone, certainly, you know. And I like what John was saying, you know,
Ignore them.
you know,
Ignore them.
if
Don't
you
worry
drop
about
off,
it.
you know, pie or something, or, you know, whatever you put on the front, you certainly could talk to someone through your window, you know, on your front lawn. So it's, I think that's the most important thing, you know, because that's what always gets me, is I think of the senior who's all alone during this time, is where my brain constantly goes, you know, like, I'm lucky I can go for a walk, I can, you know, pop over there, you know, but I think about the person that, you know, holidays are, you know, getting less and less, you know, the years are going, you know, so you don't know. So I think, and they're the highest risk, so frankly, so it makes it really a completely tricky thing. So I think, you know, just showing up, and whether it's a drive-by thing or a drop-off thing, you know, there are ways to do that. You know, I look at Halloween around my neighborhood, and people, it was so lovely, you know, really did safe things and participated without, you know, contact. So it was, whether they had a little sign up or a little display, you know, it was just, it created a very nice feeling, you know. And then people, like, I was walking around with my niece, and I would see the little seniors in the neighborhood, you know, looking out the window, and she was, of course, you know, Elsa from Frozen. And, you know, everyone's, oh, you know, they're, oh, she's so cute, you know. And it was so not, you know, there was no risk to that, because we were just walking by the street, and they were in the house, you know, waving from the window. So, like I said, something like that goes a long way. I think right now, everyone can realize, being in this time, it's like the little things that are gonna, you know, get you through this crazy situation. So.
And it is. That's the point. I mean, at the end of the day, all you can turn around is be patient.
Yeah.
You know, it's not forever. And then every now and then you'll read something. And I didn't participate. Obviously, Otto, I know, is more familiar. But you go back to holidays during World War II. for X number of years, what people had to sacrifice, and the fear that your boy was overseas and would maybe never come home, and food was being rationed, and yada, yada, yada. And that was a time when you really had no clue what tomorrow was bringing. We know there'll be a vaccine. We know we'll get through it. So many things are positive. It's just a short-term negative. And we've lived through much worse in this country, and individually we have to. So it's just,
No,
you know,
and,
I don't mean
and speaking of, like I said, there's probably going to be different things coming up as we get closer. And I certainly, want to, as we're sent different food pantries, and there's a lot of organizations that will be helping out with meals and whatnot during this time. So I definitely, as that comes in, want to promote that on the show. But Project Independence, which I thought was nice, is their November advisory committee meeting that we have every month is going to be all the regions combined. And the main theme is going to be sharing Thanksgiving stories. So it's going to be a whole little Thanksgiving kind of special thing. And people can talk about different traditions, whether it's, a memory they had from Thanksgiving, or, their favorite dish, or, it's just kind of a nostalgic thing. Because I think that's what people, want to talk about. Right now, it's like, especially because you can't do it, you want to talk about like what, and I think it creates almost like a little support group environment, and people, even if they're home, if they want to show something, that is, John and I had interviewed the supervisor for a Thanksgiving show not that long ago, and she shared something personal, which you'll be able to see on North Hempstead TV, which was so nice, which is a tradition of her family, and I think everyone in different ways.
When is that going on? Do you know?
I don't have the date. I have to look up. I know they were fun. It's probably going to be a little closer to Thanksgiving. But, so everyone's got their thing. So I think it's really nice that Project Independence, it's going to be on November 18th at 11 a.m. And I also want to say, you can listen. You don't have to share. No one's like, being forced to share anything. But it's a nice thing. So you can call 311 or 869-6311 if you want to participate in that. So just got to do our part, just little things.
You know what? At the end of the day, you just do the best you can do, and it's going to be fine. And we'll look back in a couple of years, by no means laugh, but it'll be a subject of conversation at another Thanksgiving. When my grandkids get older, we'll say, "Oh, you were only a baby, but we didn't get together that year." Otto, you had a story, and I want to start that now.
I do have a story, which is maybe a little long, but I'll
Whatever.
try to keep it short.
No, I like
all right?
it.
What it has to do with is, first of all, this should encourage, this is like finding your roots. And this should encourage seniors from making sure they do what they can for future generations as far as their family tree is concerned. And here's the story.
Okay.
My father was born in 1909 in a small village in very north part of Germany, right on the North Sea. And the facts of life are, my father did not know who his father was. My grandmother and somebody were rolling around in the hay on this little farm. And
literally rolling around in the hay,
and the net result was my father was born. Now, about 2 years later, my grandmother, who I did know, wound up getting married to somebody else and having 4 brothers or 4 sons. So my father had 4 half brothers, basically. Same mother, different father, his father unknown. To me, it's always been, and I've been to Germany once. I had a great uncle who was 93 at the time, tried talking to him to find out who was my father's father. Because my parents came from Germany, I never met a grandfather, so I always felt like I was missing something. So I wanted to try to find out who my grandfather was. And this has been going on for 30 years maybe by me, all right? And because of it, I was always big on, I have a very big family tree thing on Ancestry. And I decided a number of years ago to do my DNA. And I did my DNA, and just recently, I also heard a name, and I'll use the name that a possible name for my grandfather was William Meyer. All right. That was one of the only clues I really had. So I get this DNA match about 2 or 3 weeks ago from this young lady who's about my daughter's age. Her DNA is close to my DNA.
Okay.
And I look at her family tree with a link, and her grandfather's name was William Meyer, and her great grandfather would have been William Meyer. So I dig a little deeper, and I find out that this is my grandfather. And the reason I could pin it down was because of the years. And he immigrated to the United States in 1909. He went back to Germany to try to get my grandmother to come to the United States when he found out she was pregnant. And she didn't really want to go. He went. He had family here. And I since have learned quite a bit about him. And the facts are, he lived not far from where I lived. He was in Brooklyn, and he had children who were in Brooklyn. And I ended up, two big things that I discovered. My father, I have a draft registration card from World War II when my father was 31 years old. I also now have a draft registration card from my grandfather, who was 51 at the time. So father and son, both, and they obviously were getting desperate for people, because when a 51-year-old
Yeah.
registers for the draft, all right? That
Right.
was in 1942, in the thick of the war. So his father and son registering for the draft in World War II. And on that draft registration card, there was an address as to where my grandfather was at the time. And he lived on Prospect Park West, and he worked on Prospect Park West. So I Google mapped the address, and he owned, it said on the draft card, a soda store, which is literally an ice cream parlor, which a
Mhm.
lot of German immigrants in those days, they worked in delicatessens or ice
Yeah.
cream parlors, all right? So I go to Google, and lo and behold, in Google, at the top of that address, the store is now a liquor store, a wine store, but at the top of the store, it says ice cream, soda, whatever. The old sign is still there
Ah,
from
Wow.
1940.
Wow.
So I have now established a relationship with this young lady down in Florida, who would be like my second cousin or something, maybe in that range, uh, about all of this. So the point here is that for me, it's been a great satisfaction, because I just often wondered, who was my grandfather, you know? And now I'm looking, I've actually hired a genealogist to go a little deeper on some of the stuff in Germany. I actually have a copy of his birth certificate, 1890, when he was born.
Wow.
So where I'm going with this thing, besides the personal satisfaction of this whole thing, is for future generations in my family. I've now established,
Yeah, you've made a major like
and
connection
my
with
kids now have this cousin. I had very few on my father's side in this country. I had some, but not many. And now all of a sudden I'm looking and I'm realizing, and they all lived near here. But now, unfortunately, a lot of them are gone.
Mm.
But this young lady who lives in Florida now, who grew up on Long Island, uh, is very, very nice. And she's, we've been having tremendous email dialogue, and we're going to get together when COVID allows. So the bottom line to that is, encourage seniors,
Yeah, well,
get involved with technology,
absolutely.
get involved with things like ancestry, because you know more than anybody about what went on in your family.
No, and
And
it's a great
you know,
project, and
you know,
you're doing, and it's a perfect project for the current situation we're in, because it's all a virtual kind of thing,
right.
so it's actually, so with like, you're able to what, document or upload, how'd you get a hold of the draft card and the birth
Well,
certificate?
once I was able to pin down his date of birth,
Mhm.
and he came from Otto, Uchter, Germany.
Mhm.
Once I was able to pin that stuff down a little bit and get a name, I was now able to go on to Ancestry, Family Search. There's all kind. I have where he lived in 1925, 30, 40, who he lived with. Who did he visit in 1910? He had a brother here.
Wow.
You know, once you get the basic stuff, you can dig pretty deep.
And all these things have charges, to
Oh,
do or?
Ancestry, you pay an annual fee to do
Mhm.
what I do, which is to have world access.
Right.
All right. But if you're going to put a family tree on there,
Mhm.
you don't have to necessarily pay. You really have to look into it.
Yeah.
But what you learn and seeing this ice cream parlor, I'm going to go visit it with the hope that
Yeah.
that maybe whoever owns it now might have some old pictures of what the place looked
Right.
like, back when. Um, it's just a lot of and now I learned that the man who would have been my uncle, my grandfather's son, was in World War II. He was in Normandy and Egypt, and he got a Purple Heart and a bronze medal. Um, and would have been my first cousin was in Vietnam. So I learned a lot of things that I
No,
didn't.
that's so special. What a treasure for your family forever. I mean, doing something like that is something that now gets passed on forever. And that's incredible, and I love the idea, you're doing it, especially like, really get into the thick of things right here. And we could add that like Otto is like a private investigator, to his repertoire. I mean,
Well,
Otto's
now.
cracking a code, putting different pieces together. I mean,
Well, for years and years, like you have to visualize, here we are in 1908 in a village called Padingvorth, Germany, with a population of 100.
yeah.
A girl 17 years old gets pregnant.
Hmm.
Now, what do you think that's going to be like in a
Right.
village like that, all right, in that year? So when I visited Germany, I speak very, 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 very little German, and I speak what I do speak a dialect that's up in that part of Germany called Plattdeutsch. It's
Hmm.
a farm country. It's a
Hmm.
different dialect than they speak in the rest of Germany. Uh, so I'm there in Germany trying to talk about it, and everybody's trying to cut me off because they don't want. And I'm trying to do with my best German with my great uncle Heinrich Loos, who was 93 at the time. He got to be 93, by the way, because every day he had a shot of cognac and a beer in the morning.
In the morning. I like that. In the morning.
All right.
Except when the doctor was coming to check his blood pressure, then he waited till later. But
Okay. Well, he had some standards. There were
yeah,
some things going on.
but I had the opportunity to meet with him. He did know who he was, and he liked him. He said he was really a nice man, which was good to hear. That was his sister, is the one who was pregnant, my father's mother,
Mhm.
and and it was good to hear that. And he said he used to send money to try to help support him and whatnot. Uh, but I never had the name because nobody would, they gave me some possible names.
Mhm.
But anyhow, let's go back to, I could talk for a long time about it.
No, but I think it's so important, Otto. Like, and that is a wonderful idea, and it's a relatively, if there is a cost, depending, I guess, what you do, but it's a low cost, really, situation
A lot
to
of it's free.
figure, that out. And I think, like I said, that's a great project to do at home. So that's a great tip. Again, from Otto Loos.
Otto, this last segment was talking about the work he's been doing with his own personal ancestry line. And it was phenomenal to listen to. And there's two things I want to say. And one takes us to Kristina. One, Otto is computer literate, which is important to a degree. I don't know how much, Otto, and you can answer that. But he's also a person who takes on projects and wants to keep busy, which is something that a senior, and not a senior, I don't care who you are. You could be a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have an interest, you don't want to pursue something and give it its all, you're wasting your time, whether you're 10, 20, 40, 50, I don't care how old you are. Otto's the person, he'll put work into something, maybe put it aside. This is my interpretation of Otto. Not that he's forgetting about it, but he's doing something else, playing bowling, going golf, whatever, and then he'll pick it up and continue it. And the second piece of this is within North Hempstead, we have, and I don't remember their names, and Kristina's going to have to jump in here, these various programs where we're teaching people how to use a computer. because
Yeah,
this
the
you can't do.
technology for the terrified.
That's it. So, and there's programs like that, there's not everybody out here. Otto is, and I'm sure if we could get a close up of him, he'd be blushing, but Otto is the exemplary senior.
Amazing.
Okay. He is everybody's grandfather. He's everybody's father. He's everybody's best friend. There's not a better person in my life than Otto. I mean,
I'm gonna have to agree. I'm with you,
if
John.
it wasn't for COVID, I think I'd drive over there after the show and sit on his lap, even though I'd probably crush him.
Well, John, I miss our hugs in the studio.
I know you guys are definitely good.
You know what?
husbands.
That just made me think of something. I don't know how you can do this, but you do not have to really be a complete computer geek, if you will,
Right.
to handle Ancestry. All right.
Mhm.
Maybe it would be good if we could find somebody who's a
Yeah.
genealogist, let's
I'm
say,
gonna write that down. That's a great.
and run a session
Yeah.
on ancestry.com and looking for your family information. I think it would be worthwhile. There's a lot of people that probably have holes in their family just like I do, or maybe you want to learn more. I love to watch the show on television, Finding Your Roots.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've ever watched it.
I never heard of it.
Well, this guy Gates, Henry Gates, I think it is.
Mhm.
Okay.
He does it for celebrities for the most part,
Yeah.
and goes back and tries to find things that they don't know about. Now they have a lot of people working on it, and they have a lot of tools. I didn't have that. I had me until I pinned the name down, and then I got other people I could get involved. But I find it fascinating because it's really like history if you think about
Of
it,
course, it's
on
your
a
family
very personalized
history.
level. You talk about Christmas in World War II. That's history, bringing it down to its level of us, like
Right.
people.
Absolutely. No,
As
it is so special, because like I said, doing a project like this and then being able to now share that with your family, and your grandchildren, your kids, and just show, I mean, it's such an amazing gift, and this is, like we're gonna give Otto such a big head, after the show. But
now, if I didn't get one,
but what I always think, in addition, what Otto always does is, convert pictures to digital files, whether they were slides or, whatever it might have been, with these historical things, because I think that's always something. I mean, I think we've all been there when you wish you knew who everyone in the picture was. You'll see these old family photos and you're like, oh, like if I only asked and found out, who this was. And, that's something I really did with my grandfather, towards the end of his life. We would sit there and, I've mentioned before that he was a photographer and had all these, amazing photographs. And, that was such an important piece. And I was thinking, and that was an activity for us because my grandpa towards the end, he wasn't mobile, so he was just kind of confined to, this one area in the house. And, but it gave him, and I think that's, what John even had said, everyone needs whatever your thing is some kind of purpose, right? And some kind of hobby and interest, because it kind of fuels your day, because I was thinking, I mean, here's a guy who was home by himself, for the most part, besides our visits, so this was something that while he was home alone, he could sit there and think of. And I would say, all right, now you go through this box of slides, mark which ones, you want me to go. And then we would sit together, and it'd be a whole interactive process, and it was a project that you would see through, because then I would have them all digitized and then put like a little presentation, together for him. And it made him so happy, these little things. And frankly, it made him happy, but it made me happy because now I have all these electronic, files of photographs that, were important to him, that were like his favorite. I mean, we could have went on forever because he has, I have boxes and boxes, eventually that I would like to do.
now I don't want you to get a big head, all right, but you are unique for somebody in your age bracket who has, when I was in your age bracket, I can't tell you that I sat down with my father and mother and went through a lot of pictures. I didn't. I wish I did, all right? But I did eventually before they were gone. But a lot of people, this was a message for younger people as well, not older people only. The younger people have to reach out if they can,
Yes.
like you did, to try to get older people love to talk about most of the time about what took place in their life,
Yes.
whether you like to hear it or not. You know, what if younger people reach out to the older people? This is kind of works for both sides. You know, it's a great way to share a common bond, if you will,
Of
with the
course.
generation gap. And you're unique in that at your age, you were interested in doing that. Not a lot of people in your age bracket are. They don't see it yet. They don't realize that they are going to be there someday. You
Of
know,
course.
there's no magic formula here that says Kristina is not going to be 84 years old someday.
Well, listen, who knows, guys? I might find the magic pill. We'll see.
Well, Otto, talking about Kristina, and you're right, not to make her head swell. There's all different people that make up the world, and I'm not going to give out Kristina's age, but at that
63.
age, but at her age, her young age, many people are more. And Kristina does it all. She still goes out. She parties. Jay has that monster machine now that he go over the town with. No, but it's not like she's sitting at home doing these things. She's a party planner. She's a concerned person. She is that ray of sunshine that comes into somebody's life. And her grandfather, I guarantee you, he was delighted every time she came over, because many grandkids don't. My wife, I have three adult children. 38, 36, 33. But my wife has to remind them, did you call your grandmother?
Yeah.
No, make sure you keep up. Just it's a nice thing. Just like she'll always make sure they get a birthday present. She'll call them for their birthdays and the grandkids' birthdays. Reciprocate. Call your grandmother. Just say, hello, how are you, Grandma? She's by herself. She's 91 years old. She lives alone. You don't know what those phone calls mean to those people.
Of course, 100%.
That's where Kristina's a natural doing this stuff. That's the truth.
Oh, please.
You bring up
Guys are gonna get me emotional,
No, you bring up great point, John, because I see it with myself. I'm very fortunate in that my kids do stay in touch. I really am. But there's occasions when there's a little bit of a gap, but you have to realize that they're wrapped up in their own world. Like they all
Right.
have, in my case, they all have kids. They all have jobs. They have demanding jobs. They have schedules. On the weekend, they're finally glad they're home so that they can catch up with the laundry or go shopping or clean or do whatever. So their time is a lot less than somebody who's home alone with nothing going on. But what I'm saying is try in between, so you don't get a dish clean fast enough. Try to make time to stay in touch with the older part of your family, because they love it, in my opinion. No,
it's so, and like I said, I totally get it. Where we live in a society right now that everything is go, 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 right? Everyone's got 10,000 things they're doing, whether it's work or their own, maintaining your own house. I mean, all these things separately are, like a full-time job. And then you have kids, and then your kids are involved in 10,000 activities, so it literally consumes your entire day. And I totally get it,
well,
but
I'm sorry, but here's one other thought, all right?
Yeah.
A lot of older people, and I know many of them, say, well, I say, well, why don't you do text or an email or whatever? No, I like the phone. I want them to phone me. I said, well, when's the last time they called? Learn how to handle a text message.
No, you know what?
That's the way it is now, whether you like it or not.
No, and that's such a great point that you have, because it's both sides. We're sitting here saying, you really need to reach out to, your grandparents or your uncle, your older uncle or aunt, whatever it might be. But I think, Otto, that's such a good point too, because I think it's equally, if you want to stay connected. I mean, look at what this pandemic did to people for the better, is that they kind of were like, you had to, there was no other way, or option to connect to your loved ones. So you had to do this. And Otto's right. Like, listen, we could complain all day, but the fact of the matter is, I mean, I laugh, and obviously as the generations get younger and younger, that's the mode of communication, right? It's text. It's so rare. I mean, my brother doesn't have his voicemail on his cell phone set up, because he's like, who leaves voicemails? And my brother's only, 9 years younger than me. We're not talking like some crazy, thing. And it made me laugh, because he looked at me like who the hell leaves a voicemail? Like, it was such like a foreign concept, and that's only going to keep increasing. So, you're right. Unfortunately, we could all say, oh, I don't want to do it, but to connect and to stay, and especially now that you could have these video kind of things, and it's relatively easy, you know, on these smart devices to do. I think it is something important that the senior also needs to kind of get in. And there are programs like Project Independence has these technology for the terrified courses. You know, we had, you know, not too long ago, the Oates Center, you know, the seniors in technology. They have a hotline, you know, which I actually got to get that number handy because they told me, I met with him again and he said, please give out that number. And that's a hotline that any of our seniors can call and, you know, give, you know, ask a question, you know, and there's different, all different programs. So it's certainly something to do. So call 311 at the end of the day.
It's the truth. We're actually ending. We're at the end of the show, and I just want to make one comment. Marcus was tremendous this morning, the earlier part of the show, and I think this has turned out to be one of the best Kristina Lou shows. Just the sharing, the idea of Thanksgiving, the tent, Otto with the answer. I think it was wonderful.
Because you guys made me cry, so you know that really.
I like that too. I always like that. No, you're only kidding.
There's a hug.
You've been listening to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, everybody. Stay safe and stay strong. We'll be here next week.